In 2018, Dave Ramsey did a survey of 10,000 American millionaires to find out how they got rich. And he discovered something surprising. 3 out of 4 millionaires said the key to their wealth was one investment strategy. Not stock picking, not trading, certainly not crypto, something much simpler and lower risk. And over my 18 years of professional experience, during which I've invested hundreds of millions of euros, I have used this same strategy to get great results here in Europe as well. Okay, so what did Dave Ramsey discover? Well, let's take a step back. When I ask people here in Europe how you can build wealth, the most popular answers that I get are you need rich parents, or you should go into politics, or you have to start a software company. But Ramsey's study showed the opposite. For one thing, 4 out of 5 millionaires did not receive an inheritance. In other words, the money didn't come from their parents. This also matches other research, such as the Wealth X Very High Net Worth report from 2020, which demonstrated that among individuals worth $5 to $30 million globally, 85% were self-made. Going back to Ramsey's study, the other interesting finding was that most millionaires were not business owners. In fact, the most popular careers were regular jobs like engineer, accountant, teacher, attorney, and manager. Now, of course, you could say that this survey was biased. Because Dave Ramsey is a personal finance coach, it's possible he just surveyed the kind of people who build wealth according to the principles that he teaches. But the point remains, you don't need an inheritance or a successful business to build wealth. Many people become wealthy even while earning a decent income at a normal job. In Ramsey's survey, 75% of millionaires said their wealth came from patient, long-term investing. So what is this investment strategy that they used? Was it investing in stocks? Well, yes, but with a twist. You may have read about lucky stock investors who invested $5,000 in Nvidia 20 years ago, which grew to $3 million by November 2025. Perhaps you heard about Ronald Reed, the American janitor and gas station attendant who died with a fortune of $8 million after making some great stock investments. But getting lucky with picking individual stocks is actually the exception, not the rule. That's because profits in the stock market are not evenly distributed. Now, of course, the future may be different, but let's take a look at history. Over the past 50 years, the average return in global stocks has been around 9% per year. And this has been great. I mean, it has created trillions of euros in wealth for investors. But investors only earned this 9% per year if they held a diversified portfolio, which means hundreds of different stocks in different companies, industries, and countries. The typical stock picker who held just a few individual stocks got much worse results. That's because most stocks in the market earn much less than the average, while a few amazing stocks earn a lot more, pulling the average up. Studying stocks takes a lot of skill and effort because you've got to read financial statements and build Excel models and follow the news. And even if you're quite good at it, the odds are stacked against you. According to research by Professor Henrik Bessenbinder, over the past 90 years in the US stock market, the average stock lost investors money. So the average stock that you could have picked out of all the stocks available was a loser. And the report from JP Morgan called The Agony and the Ecstasy showed that as many as 40% of all stocks experience catastrophic losses, where they fall in value by 70% and never recover. That is why stock pickers are usually not the most successful investors. This study from researchers at the Copenhagen Business School estimated the cost of diversification, meaning the cost of holding just a few stocks as opposed to a diversified portfolio, cost investors an average of 3.1% per year, which is just a huge amount of underperformance. So it shouldn't be surprising that most of the millionaires in Dave Ramsey's study didn't say they were stock pickers. Instead, they reported using investment funds to build their wealth. The key to their success was patient, long-term investing in investment funds. Now, an investment fund is where you pool your money with other investors and give it to a professional manager who invests it in stocks or other assets for you. This is an easy way to build a diversified portfolio of hundreds of different stocks, which is likely to have a much better long-term outcome than individual stock picks. But of course, the next question is, what investment funds should you buy? Because there are thousands of different funds out there. How do you find the most profitable ones? Well, this is where I have a disagreement with Dave Ramsey. He often recommends investors use so-called actively managed investment funds. These are funds run by a professional investor who tries to pick the best stocks for you, tries to beat the market for you. And that sounds great in theory, right? You want a smart professional to pick the best possible stocks for you. But in practice, there's one big problem with this approach. Stock picking does not work well, even when it's done by professionals. Most actively managed investment funds get poor results. For example, the Standard & Poor's SPIVA report shows that over the past 15 years, 88% of actively managed U.S. investment funds underperformed the S&P 500 index. And the main reason behind this failure is high fees. Actively managed funds charge a lot to manage your money. Here in Europe, according to the European Fund and Asset Management Association 2025 Fact Book, the typical actively managed fund costs about 1% per year in fees. And to be sure, everybody deserves to get paid for their work. But it doesn't make sense to pay these high fees to active managers if you get a poor result in return. So what is the alternative? Like, what do I prefer? Well, it's index funds. An index fund is a fund that does not try to pick the best stocks out there. Instead, it just buys all the stocks in the market. Basically, you invest in hundreds of different companies covering different industries in different countries. Your investment is very, very diversified, which protects you from many risks, and you pay a very low fee for the privilege. Index funds earn you the market average result, the index result minus a low fee. And at least historically, this has been a really good outcome. According to a study from Morningstar called the Active Passive Barometer, over the past 20 years in the US market, index funds got better results than 90% of actively managed funds. Warren Buffett said this: by periodically investing in an index fund, the know-nothing investor can actually outperform most investment professionals. Many Nobel Prize winners recommend and invest in index funds, and I invest my family's wealth in index funds as well. Specifically, I use a form of index fund that is common in Europe, called an ETF, an exchange-traded fund. It's an index fund that you can easily buy on the stock exchange like any other stock. All right, but there's one additional benefit to index funds and ETFs that many people don't appreciate. They are passive. Buy it and forget it. ETF investing can take literally just a few hours per year. Let me show you why that is important using a simple investment calculator. So let's assume that you're investing for 20 years and you can put aside 500 euros a month. First, in scenario one, I'm going to assume that you are a super successful active stock investor. So you spend 10 hours per week to pick the best stocks and you manage to outperform the market. So if the market earns 9% per year, let's say you earn 10% per year. So that's a tremendous outcome. Almost nobody accomplishes that. But if you do, after 20 years, you would have 361,000 euros, which is nice. For scenario two, let's assume that you are an index investor. So instead of 10% per year, you get 9% per year. So that drops your final balance to 321,000 euros, which obviously is less, right? But you have to realize that now you don't need to spend 10 hours per week picking stocks. You can now use this time on a side hustle to make more money. So maybe that allows you to invest 800 euros a month instead of 500. And suddenly your outcome would be 513,000, much more than the smart and successful active investor in scenario one. Now, obviously, this is just an illustration, but here's my point. Unless you work in finance, where you get paid to invest other people's money, it's a waste of your time to be an active investor. Even if you succeed, which is really rare, the impact on your final wealth will be relatively small. If you use the same time and effort to boost your income and save more money, that will likely help you a lot more than the smartest investment strategies out there. This is why passive investing can be so powerful, because it gives you the freedom to spend your time as you wish. Okay, but there's one more insight from Ramsey's survey. Almost everybody in the survey used a 401k for investing. In America, a 401k is a type of retirement account which has tax benefits. And this is really helpful because taxes can be a big drag on your investments. If your European country has some tax-advantaged investments available, consider using them. In the UK, you can look at the ISA or the SIP. In France, you have the PEA. In Denmark, the ASK. In Sweden, the ISK. Ireland has the PRSA. The Netherlands has its own types of pension plans. Almost every country in Europe has something. So check what tax-friendly investments are available in your country and take advantage of them. So here's how I would adopt the Millionaire investment strategy from Dave Ramsey's survey to investors here in Europe. First, work hard to increase your savings rate. Second, invest your savings in low-cost index funds or ETFs. Third, put as much money as possible into tax-advantaged accounts where you get tax benefits. And fourth, invest the rest of your money in a regular taxable account. Of course, you need to consider your individual circumstances, and investing always involves risk. But for most regular people, passive investing, long-term buy and hold, is probably the smartest approach. Naturally, even with this kind of strategy, you will have questions like which ETFs or index funds should you choose? How do you find a good low-cost brokerage or investment app? And how do you handle taxes? I cover many of these topics in various videos on my channel, but I've also put together a step-by-step training that you might find useful. To check it out, just follow the first link in the description.